Welcome back to Desk Careers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today, we are going to be having my favorite conversation. We're going to be talking about all things careers education with Chris Webb, who is zooming in from the United Kingdom. He is a careers practitioner who is currently working at a university in the UK. Welcome, Chris. I'm so excited to have you with me today.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me, Maria. Yeah, very excited to be here.
It's so exciting. I love having this conversation with practitioners from around the world because I believe that by collaborating and engaging in these conversations, not only can we help the youth understand how we think, but we can also help families around the globe begin to understand how they can be speaking with their young people at home. And I think this is really important in terms of guiding families and guiding students. So I'm so excited. But before we jump into that conversation about how do you help the youth and what are some of your tips and strategies, I thought we could take you down memory lane to a time when you were a teenager and probably thinking about your future. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have to cast my mind back now. I think, probably when I was a teenager, maybe around sort of perhaps say 15, 16, I was thinking about what I might kind of go and do next, whether that was going to be sixth form or college as it is in the UK, and what might kind of come after that, which typically at kind of that point in time, university was sort of gaining in popularity, like during that period in the UK. And I suppose, I didn't really kind of have any idea. I'd undertaken work experience kind of when I was about 14, and that was in a primary school for about 2 weeks. I decided really didn't want to do that in the future, just definitely put me off. And I suppose the things that I liked was, I've always liked words, always enjoyed English, always enjoyed history, kind of some of the more sort of essay related subjects on an academic level. And I was always really interested in people. So interested in kind of the wider sort of society stuff. So things around like sociology, that was a subject I studied at A-level. Psychology, kind of how people think, it was another subject I did at A-level. And I suppose then just kind of being with people and communicating with people, on a general basis outside of, work and study. I've always kind of liked doing sort of quite sociable things. And I suppose for me, the difficulty was, where do I go with all of that? And I think probably like a lot of people of my generation, particularly in the UK, I studied subjects, from 16 to 18 that I was interested in, history, sociology, psychology. And then, like a lot of people of my generation, I was kind of encouraged, to go to university. Not necessarily with a kind of clear idea of what I might get out of it. Some of the stuff which still does happen now in the UK, I think. And I suppose really I kind of picked a subject, which was criminology, that I thought fit kind of a few of the things that I was quite interested in. I liked sociology. I liked thinking about why people did things. I was quite interested in crime novels. That seems like quite a strange way to sort of select a university subject. But that was kind of the way that I sort of made those decisions, really. And I guess over the course of, my time at university, that, I guess sort of showed me some of the things that I enjoyed more and some of the skills that I enjoyed using. But I would say it probably still didn't necessarily kind of take me to where I thought I might want to be, because I guess the truth is I just didn't really know. So quite similar to many people at that age, I guess.
And it is, you see it, I see it. It's quite a challenging time. It's a time not only that young people have to think about what they want to do, but also about deadlines and exam schedules. And it's kind of like your whole world in 12 months right at the end. It's such a rush of a time, and it's emotionally triggering, and not just for the student but also for the family. I find that it's a family journey of incredible, oh no, what if we get it wrong? Would you say that when you were making that choice that you felt that way, or did you have guidance along the path?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, personally, I think things have changed a lot in the UK since I was that age. So I think there's a lot more pressure on young people now, and that may well be true across education systems across the world. I think a number of things have influenced that. Social media, definitely. I think the fact that it's much, much easier to compare yourself now with other people. And when I was going through that stage, Facebook had just about kicked off by the time I left for university. So in the UK, so we didn't really have any of that going through that kind of period as teenagers. So I think, that has definitely made a difference. I think the education system in the UK has become a little bit more pressurised as well. I think there's more expectations on young people. So I think it's kind of difficult for me to say for certain, how much I could compare it to kind of people going through the process today. And I think the other side of it is the background you come from. I come from quite a middle-class background in the UK, parents who worked in kind of professional occupations, probation service, healthcare. So, not really, really well off, but kind of having that sort of social capital, having, people who could talk to me about pathways through, university and those sort of things, kind of, even kind of connections within other sort of professions that perhaps kind of some young people from certain backgrounds might not have. So I think I got quite a lot of good and sort of useful, I guess, advice and conversations. I talked about it a lot with my family, but certainly in terms of kind of guidance, why I might do something at university and where it might take me definitely wasn't something I felt like I had a lot of conversations about. I think it was picking something, like I say, that I enjoyed as a subject and never really thinking about it until the moment I left university and completed my degree, and then thought, oh, what am I doing now? So, I think there was, I felt supported probably from a family basis, but I think, it wasn't something, I guess, that myself or any of my peers really talked about where we might go with those things. So.
And I find that really interesting because I can resonate with your experience. I had a very similar experience myself. However, times have changed. Technology is crazy fast, changing, so quickly, but careers education still seems to be lagging behind. And what I see as a professional right now is that we now have parents who didn't have support, wish they did, but are unskillfully supporting their children through that process, thinking in the mindset of just get them to university. So there you are at university level, meeting young people. I know what I wish it could be before they get to your place of academic journey. But what's it like for a practitioner working at a university? And let's look at different case scenarios, because I think it's important that we don't generalize everybody would fit into this box. So let's break it down into potentially 3 scenarios. The first being a student that had no idea, made any choice and show up at the career service. A student who thought they knew exactly what they wanted to do and get there and realize, oof, I'm not quite sure. And then maybe a student that's kind of going with the flow and finding their way. Do you notice a difference in students when they come and knock on your door?
Yeah, I think, again, that's a really good question. And you're absolutely right that, we can't really generalize. I mean, I suppose a key point, really, I work for a kind of a university that really kind of prides itself on being an applied learning institution. So we have a number of people who come and do courses there where they are really, really sure that it's the route they want to take. So things, for example, like occupational therapy, nursing, for example, where, there's probably been quite a lot of thought generally in terms of kind of people going into those sort of courses, partly because of what they might get out of it in terms of, a kind of chartered professional status or kind of a clear route into work. So I think, it's absolutely right to say that not everyone will kind of experience the same thing. But I think one of the big myths around, I guess, kind of university is that I think sometimes we kind of feel like, young people go from being 18 and kind of finishing college or finishing sixth form or whatever they're doing and going into university almost as if there's going to be some massive change in the way that you think about your career overnight. And of course, that's very, very rarely the case. So one of the things that we do at my institution, which is becoming much more popular now across the UK, is really embedding careers and employability education into the academic curriculum, as I think most kind of careers professionals feel it should be. It's not something that's always been the case within sort of universities in the UK, but it's something where you can kind of then sort of have those conversations with kind of people at the early stage of their degree and start to capture some of those sort of concerns that you were talking about in terms of individuals who've maybe started a degree and then realize, oh, wow, that really wasn't the right subject for me. Those who've kind of started it and thought, no idea what I want to do with it, but actually the more they learn, the more they start to get engaged, excited, motivated about where they could go with it. And those who, feel quite relaxed, but actually it's useful for them to know what is out there and what they can do with it. So one of the things that we do from that kind of point of view is, particularly for people in the first year of their degrees, are sessions where we talk very much about self-awareness. We talk about, why did you decide to come and study this degree? And the answers are really variable. Some people are like, I don't really know. I'm here, I just don't really know. But I think it's those starting points, is actually being able to talk about those things, all the way through a kind of program of study, and realizing that it's not a scary thing, or it's not a bad thing to want to talk about those things. And you might not know, and that's absolutely fine. But kind of knowing, your reasons and your motivations behind why you might want to be studying it, and where you could take it, what opportunities might be out there, I think kind of makes the thing slightly less daunting, and sort of slightly less head in the sand, kind of pushing it back until you eventually finish your studies. So yeah, I think it's a great question about, not generalizing. And I think the answer is, you have to talk about it from a very early stage.
I really do. And that's why we're trying to get it trying to have that conversation, or encouraging families to have that conversation right from the beginning. I just think the world of work is at our fingertips, and yet it's kind of like an isolated experience for a student. Like you said, it's sort of like, oh yeah, I'll graduate from uni, and then magically I'll know exactly what I'm supposed to do. And this is another one of my concerns. So I'm going to bring this next question to you, and that the world is changing. It's evolving right now with the pandemic as it is. We're seeing people working all over the world remotely. And as you said, because of that, there's so much more concern for comparison. Now, at a time, maybe in my generation, when in my local neighborhood, I might be thinking, well, how many people would really be competing for this one opportunity? Suddenly, I'm not just thinking about my local neighborhood. I'm thinking about there's people all over the world that might accept a lower salary and might have better skills and might have more experience. It's really a stressful time. How does the career service, from your perspective, help a young person who's not aware of what is coming? Because let's face it, even at university, they're still spoon-fed a little bit. People tell them where to go. Professors tell them what to read. They know their deadlines. But then at work, that completely changes. Even the experience of getting an interview is a whole journey on its own. How do you see career services helping students, or maybe hindering students?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and again, I think to kind of start with, it's useful to kind of caveat, and as you said before, not to generalize. There are some kind of universities and university courses where, it's perhaps less of that kind of spoon-fed side of things because of the nature of the course, maybe vocational elements of it, perhaps, the way that it's delivered. But I think you're right that, it can sometimes feel, and, hear feedback from students about this, that even kind of up to university level can feel a bit like a treadmill, educational treadmill. You're just kind of going on it. You're not entirely sure how you take that first step off. I think our role as a career service really is to kind of help people look up. So I think it's very, very easy to be kind of quite insular when you're studying something. You focus on the subject, on the academic work, your life within the institution. And I think that idea of looking up, of actually just kind of seeing where you are within the world around you is really important. And that idea of kind of having lots of information, I think, can be a negative, but I think there's also lots of positives to it. And I think the big positive about things like social media, whether that's stuff like Instagram or Twitter, or whether it's kind of professional social media, things like LinkedIn, is that it's kind of never really been easier to talk to people. And I think talking to people is what demystifies the process, and the world of work. So, the idea of having informational interviews, a bit like we're doing now, finding out about what people do, but actually seeing the person behind the job or the industry, and knowing that actually, all of us were and are normal people, who've gone through a process to get to that point, and probably had very similar feelings when we were in that position, when we were younger. So I think too much information, it can be that information overload. Where do I start? But I think the flip side of that is, it's never been easier to talk to people, and actually the vast majority of people want to talk about themselves and want to help. I truly believe that the majority of people are very, very keen to help people in the early stage of their career. So I think that's kind of part of the way that we sort of support people, is first of all kind of getting them to sort of look up and understand, okay, where do I kind of fit within the world? Where do I want to fit within the world? And that also at the moment includes a real social justice element, thinking about things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, thinking about things recently like COP26 in Glasgow, are there sort of causes, are there, things that you want to be a priority within your career, whatever job you might do. So I think, kind of that, getting that wider understanding of the world and where you might fit into it. And then I think, connecting people with opportunities. And I think that's something that is essential really for any kind of career service, helping people get that idea of, what their kind of priorities and values are, but then being able to maybe connect them to people and opportunities that can help them along the way.
I love that. And young people, what I'm seeing from my angle is young people are really keen on choosing an occupation that allows them to connect with a social purpose, like you said, and feel that they're not just working, that they're actually working on purpose with intention. So I love that you brought that in, because it is about choosing intentionally, not just what we want to do, but where we want to do it as well, thinking about the ethics of the organization. I love that you mentioned that careers work is a constant learning experience. I know that you've mentioned a few things already, but how do you see careers education as not just something you do when you're at university or something that you do when you need to do it, but as something that you do as a learning journey? Because I think it is a learning journey, but I'm curious to see how you see that learning journey.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems that we have in society is the concept of career and how it's defined. So I think, often when you hear the word career, people think work, they think working in one job or one industry, and that's your career, going up that ladder. And I think that's kind of quite damaging, because it creates a very linear view of what your career is. There are obviously lots and lots of different kind of theoretical concepts of career. For me, it's very much, it's your journey through life and work. So I don't think the two can ever be separated. I think so many people make decisions about what they do for work based on their life circumstances that you can't really ever separate the two. So I think anything you do within your life falls under that kind of umbrella of career. So I think that's quite an important starting point, because I think once you have that definition of it, you realize that it's not linear. It's not going to be kind of just lots of simple steps up to something. It's going to be quite squiggly. It's going to be going back and forth. It's going to be, kind of switchbacks and sort of exploring different things kind of throughout your life. So I think once you kind of have that mindset that, about really that kind of curious mindset, the fact that, career is about exploration, it's about trying things. There's a practitioner kind of in the UK who works for an organization called Grad Consult, called Mike Gray, who wrote a fantastic article about basically follow your passion, and why that can be kind of quite dangerous advice sometimes. Because, of course, for a lot of people, how do you know what your passion is at age 15, 16? Some people might, but actually probably the vast majority of us don't really know. It took me really to the age of 27 until I realized what I kind of wanted to follow as a rough kind of idea of work. But even then, constantly, I'm kind of reassessing and reevaluating and trying new things and dipping into kind of other areas of work, like careers writing, so outside of my day job. So I think it's that curiosity that's important, and kind of understanding that, it's not necessarily really about an end goal, so to speak, but it's kind of, as you said, a mindset where you move through your career. And actually, you're receptive to taking opportunities. You don't see it as just this kind of conveyor belt that you can't get off, but something where you've got kind of agency and you've got choice, really.
It's so amazing. And I think that's also really empowering, because in a time of reaction, for example, what's going on right now with many people around the world losing their jobs because of COVID, having that empowerment and that learning that they would have done before kind of feels like a solid foundation, that whatever goes on, I know that I'm learning something about myself on this journey, and I will pass through it. Another thing that you mentioned is gaining voluntary and work experience. Now, from a young student in secondary school outside of the UK, that can potentially be really challenging, because there are so many restrictions, and many times regulations don't always allow them to do those things. So when they come over to the UK, for example, is that something really necessary? Can a young person kind of make it through? And again, this is your perspective, Chris. This is really us having a conversation. Do you think that we should be encouraging young people to do it for that learning process, or because it's an outcome-based process for them and they need it to get to the next academic milestone?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think a lot of it can depend on industry. So I think, there are some industries where, you would definitely need to have some form of work experience in order to kind of, maybe not to kind of get onto an academic course of study, but certainly that next stage, securing maybe an internship or a placement or a kind of graduate role, a non-graduate role. So I think for some industries, it's kind of slightly different. But I think on a kind of more general level, yes, there's always a benefit to work experience in the sense of getting an understanding of what the world of work is like, building up your kind of picture of what the world of work looks like. And I guess, the parts of sort of work that really motivate and engage you and the parts that really kind of drain you and you feel perhaps you wouldn't want to take further. So I'm a big advocate of work experience. I think the difficulty, as you've said at the moment, is what's happened over the past couple of years. We've experienced that even on like a local level in the UK, because obviously there's been lots of restrictions due to COVID-19. And we've seen the rise of quite a lot of, virtual work experience programs. So in the UK, organizations like Bright Network, Forage, where, students can kind of undertake sort of short-term virtual work experiences. I suppose the thing that I always kind of think about when it comes to kind of gaining experience is it's not necessarily so much just the kind of box to tick to say you've had experience, but actually having the time to be able to reflect on that experience and talk about what you gained from it. So I think, one of the problems we've had in the past, and this was certainly the case when I did work experience when I was in school, is that we kind of send people off to do work experience, but we don't really think about the preparation or what happens afterwards and the reflection. And I think that's definitely changed somewhat in the UK, certainly with kind of schools and kind of colleges, universities that do it well. There's a lot of that kind of preparation. What do you want to get out of this experience? There's maybe kind of touch points during the work experience. And then there's kind of the key thing for me is there's a reflection afterwards. What skills did you gain from it? What did you find that you really enjoyed? Which things would you want to keep for something that you do in the future? Which things would you want to definitely throw away? And how might that have influenced you in terms of thinking about what opportunities you might want to look for next? Whether that's a course, whether that's more work experience or a job or an apprenticeship, anything like that. So I think, there's a lot of value to work experience, not necessarily for the tick box, but for, being able to talk about an experience and reflect on it and think about what you've gained from it.
So aligned with everything that you're saying. Chris, I could keep going on and asking you so many questions. I'm going to bring it to my last question of the day is, when you look back at your career, what do you want to have accomplished and how can that inspire young people that you work with?
Oh, that is a great question. I suppose the answer would be, and I guess to be fair, this kind of fits with some of the stuff I've been saying, I'm not 100% sure yet. So, I probably don't feel like I'm far enough along in my career to have a definitive answer to that. I think one thing that I always wanted to do on a very, very basic level was help people. So I had, as I mentioned, quite a kind of wavy career as well. I started off working in, volunteering first and then working for kind of educational charities. So working with, students that for whatever reason, education hadn't worked out for them, but they were looking to kind of get back on track and move on to something, whether that was an apprenticeship or college or university or into a job. And so I always enjoyed that idea of kind of helping people find what would be sort of the right pathway for them, and sort of, as you said earlier, kind of empowering, but also maybe supporting where perhaps people don't have those networks or don't have that support, already within their lives. And we have to acknowledge that, as you said earlier, it's not the same for everybody. And it's not as easy for everybody to kind of make leaps as it is for some. So I think that's kind of always been a big thing for me is not just the element of helping people, but I think that social justice element of, helping people who perhaps might not be able to get that support within their lives generally. In terms of what that might look like and what I'd maybe have hoped to have accomplished long term is a really good question. I suppose it's sort of helping the greatest number that you can within the capacity that you can. And I think there's lots of different ways that you can do that. So far in my career, it's mostly been on a one-to-one or kind of a group basis, working as a kind of careers professional. But there are other things that I've also been kind of considering for the longer term. And, that might include, for example, setting up my own business in the future and doing something, that's very, very kind of specific that I decide is something that I have a real interest in. So I think kind of just to go back to what I was saying, I still feel very curious even at this point in my career. I don't feel like I'm finished to any extent. And I think I'm still learning and still exploring, where I might end up in the future. But I think the key thing for me is helping people and particularly supporting people who, to kind of think about and to find out the things that they might want to do, but also to kind of support them with the elements that maybe they don't get, already in their lives, connecting them with people and opportunities.
Love it. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. And I love having these conversations with practitioners because we get each other. We understand, we see it. And I think we connect on the level of wanting young people to feel empowered. And that's what this work is all about. And that brings us right to the end of an incredible conversation. Today, we were speaking with Chris Webb, who zoomed out from the United Kingdom. He is a careers practitioner working with the youth at a university level. Thank you all for watching. I hope that you're walking away listening to this conversation, feeling inspired to stay on the learning journey towards your aspired career. We'll see you all at our next Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.